Oscar's ex-girlfriend was diagnosed with cancer. I anonymously transferred some money to her, but I was still found out. Oscar threw the card in my face. We're already married. What more do you want? Do you want to humiliate a dying person with money? I looked at him quietly. Oscar, it was you who proposed to me first. Chapter 1. The day we found out about Oscar's ex-girlfriend's cancer was supposed to be the day of our anniversary trip. I was packing and turned to ask Oscar, should I pack that dark green tie? But he stood there, staring blankly at his phone screen, as if he'd lost all sense. Oscar? I called him again, and he snapped out of it, looking at me. Eva. I paused for a moment. What's wrong? Eva is dying. After saying that, he didn't look at me again and turned to rush out the door. He left so quickly, as if every second mattered, as if he might never see her again. When I arrived at the hospital, Oscar was already in the room with Eva. He finished flipping through her diagnosis report, his face dark, then asked, when did this happen? Eva was curled up small on the hospital bed, her face pale, almost translucent. Last month, during a checkup, the doctor said it's too late. There's no chance of a cure. Before she could finish, she saw me standing in the doorway and suddenly burst into tears. I'm sorry, Carolina. I didn't mean to disturb your marriage. I'm just so scared. I'm only 24. I don't want to die. Oscar turned around and followed her gaze. Seeing me there, his expression instantly darkened, and there was a hint of blame in his eyes. What are you doing here? At that moment, bringing up the anniversary trip we'd planned to make up for missing our honeymoon felt out of place, so I lowered my eyes and gently said to Eva, I just came to see if there's anything I can help with. No need. Before Eva could speak, Oscar already responded harshly. You should go back. Before leaving, almost against my will, I glanced back. Oscar had already pulled Eva into his arms, holding her tightly. Her small face rested on his shoulder, eyes closed, tears streaming endlessly. You're all I have left, she choked, whispering. Oscar, I have nothing, only you. Oscar hugged her tighter, his voice hoarse. I know. It seemed as though they had always been deeply in love, never apart. I stood there, staring blankly at the scene, an overwhelming wave of emotions rising inside me. Yet I could do nothing. In the face of death, any emotions felt by those who are healthy and alive seem childish. Chapter 2. Oscar and I were childhood sweethearts, and we started dating when we were 16. Later, some changes happened in my family, and I had to go abroad. Since the time of my return was uncertain, I broke up with Oscar. He got very angry, saying that I didn't trust him enough to maintain a long-distance relationship. But on the day I left, he came to the airport with red eyes and said, Caro, I'll wait for you to come back. No matter how long it takes, I'll always wait for you. Because of those words, during the hardest days, I managed to get through it all alone, finishing a 5-year course in just 3 years. But when I returned, Oscar already had a new girlfriend, a small but pretty girl named Eva, who was his junior at school. I heard that she pursued Oscar for a long time, devoted herself for 2 years, and only then did Oscar reluctantly agree to be with her. After I came back, a group of childhood friends gathered. Someone mentioned Eva. She's so clingy. Wherever Oscar goes, she follows. If he drinks, she stays with him to sober up in the wind. If he's sick, she makes soup and takes care of him. I heard she even wanted to come to our gathering today. Oscar frowned, clearly in a bad mood. Don't mention her. Right. I forgot. Now that Carolina's back, Oscar should probably cut ties with her. Instinctively, I glanced at Oscar, but he wasn't looking at me. His head was down, staring coldly at his phone screen. That day's gathering didn't end on a particularly happy note. Afterward, Oscar asked if I wanted him to take me home, but I could tell from the tension in his expression that he didn't really want to. So I calmly said, no need. I didn't drink, and I drove myself. He seemed relieved and drove off. It wasn't until much later that I found out that day was Eva's birthday. She sat at the top of the Ferris wheel, holding a cake, sending him a forced smile in a photo. Oscar sped through the night and managed to reach her just before midnight. Chapter 3. When I got home, the half-packed luggage was still sprawled across the bedroom. I started putting the clothes back piece by piece. When I reached the toiletry bag, I paused. Inside was an electric shaver, already a bit old, in a bright sky blue color, something that didn't seem like something Oscar would buy. So who gave it to him? The answer was obvious. I stared at it for a while, then put it away in the drawer. After dark, Oscar finally came home. His eyes were bloodshot, the corners slightly reddened, his expression carrying a dazed weariness. I walked up to him and said, "I've canceled the flight and hotel. For my parents. When we go back this weekend, we'll tell them that the things we promised to bring might not make it this time. We'll buy more next time we travel abroad." I was just calmly going over the arrangements for our aborted trip. But suddenly, Oscar got angry. He stared into my eyes, his tone harsh. "Why are you even telling me this? Can't you handle such a small thing yourself?" I froze for a second. For some reason, I suddenly remembered many years ago when we first started dating. At that time, we were in the same high school but not in the same class. I got into some trouble with the girls in my class, so I contacted their parents to resolve it. After school, the girls, still holding grudges, cornered me in the equipment room. Because of the way I was raised, I was used to handling things on my own, so I didn't tell Oscar about any of it. But he still found out and rushed to the scene, chasing those girls away. Then he turned around, angry, and looked at me. "Why didn't you tell me when you had trouble? I could handle it myself." "But I'm your boyfriend." Back then, a teenage Oscar said those words angrily and came to my class every night for 2 weeks after that. It took him a long time to slowly change my mindset, making me share things with him instinctively, letting him know what I was up to. And now, he was telling me, "Why are you even telling me this? Can't you handle such a small thing yourself?" Chapter 4. It seemed like Oscar realized he was losing control of his emotions, so he paused slightly, his tone softening. "Sorry, Caro. I'm just feeling a bit stressed." I took a deep breath. "I'm going to take a shower." When I came out of the bathroom, Oscar was nowhere to be seen. I searched around and finally found him on the terrace upstairs, smoking one cigarette after another. Oscar wasn't someone with a smoking habit. Back when he had a big fight with Eva and broke up with her, it wasn't long after that he proposed to me. That day, Eva was also at the proposal scene. She stood there, pale, crying miserably. Oscar saw her, but he didn't say a word. But that night, I woke up and found him on the balcony, smoking, staring straight into the northern night sky where a few sparse stars twinkled. That direction was where the city's tallest Ferris wheel was located. Just like last time, I didn't say anything and silently went back to the bedroom. I didn't know if I caught a cold or something. But the next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache. I had always had issues with migraines, so I rummaged through the drawers for some painkillers. Suddenly, Oscar rushed out of the bathroom and stormed toward me, his face clouded with anger. His voice was filled with barely suppressed rage. "Where's my shaver?" My temples throbbed painfully, and before I could respond, Oscar grabbed my wrist. "Carolina, where is my shaver?" he asked again, gripping my wrist so tightly that I winced in pain. "It's in the bedside drawer." Oscar didn't say another word and turned to search for the shaver that Eva had given him. I rubbed my reddened wrist, found the painkillers, and swallowed 2 pills. Eva's sudden cancer diagnosis had completely consumed Oscar's mind, leaving him no room to notice my headache. After all, it was just a minor problem, at least, to him. In the following days, Oscar didn't go to work. He spent his time contacting every top oncologist in the city. They all gave him the same conclusion. Eva's cancer had reached the terminal stage. No matter what treatment was done, it would only extend her life a little. With every confirmation of this result, the pain on Oscar's face deepened. One evening, I was driving home from work and happened to see Oscar and Eva in the yard. Compared to the last time I saw her, Eva looked even thinner. She had taken off her blue and white striped hospital gown and was wearing a wine red slip dress. Sitting on the swing in the yard, the golden red rays of the setting sun fell upon her, adding a warm glow to her otherwise pale face. And there was my husband, Oscar, kneeling on one knee in front of her, applying lipstick to her pale lips. I sat in the car, quietly watching the scene. In that moment, I couldn't help but think, perhaps the thing Oscar regretted most in life was marrying me. Chapter 5. I stayed at a nearby bar until midnight, and Oscar finally seemed to remember that I existed in this world. So he called me. Caro, where are you? Before I could answer, the sound of a band playing drifted through the phone. Oscar paused. I'll come get you. By the time he arrived, the band had finished their last song and left the stage. I was sitting in a corner, with an untouched mojito on the table. Oscar stood in front of me, the dim light casting a strange solemnness on his face. Why did you come here alone to drink? I didn't, I said. I just ordered a drink and sat here, listening to music. Hearing me say that, Oscar's expression softened a bit. He grabbed my hand. Let's go home. When I got into the car, I smelled a familiar scent of disinfectant. It was obvious that he had only remembered me after sending Eva back to the hospital. So I asked, how's Eva doing? In fact, ever since learning about her illness, I had remained silent on the matter in front of Oscar. This was the first time I brought it up. He couldn't avoid it anymore and had to answer. Not well. I've arranged for the best doctors to treat her. But the situation is still grim. Realizing how inappropriate that sounded, he added, Caro, don't misunderstand. I just feel guilty for not treating her well before and want to make it up to her. That was the truth. I had heard from friends back home that Oscar hadn't treated Eva well. 6 months after I went abroad, Oscar met Eva. She was very grateful to Oscar for helping her solve her problems, and that gratitude quickly grew into the blossoming love of a young girl. For the next 2 years, no matter how cold or sarcastic Oscar was, she remained passionately devoted to him. Eventually, he was moved, but even when they were dating, it was always Eva who gave more. Thinking of this, I let out a long sigh. Besides, she's about to die. Oscar's voice even had a slight choke to it when he said that. That feeling of helplessness and guilt that comes when a healthy person faces an unbeatable illness was something I understood all too well. That's why, at this moment, I felt so powerless. Even though Oscar is my husband, even though I am his legal wife, the rest of the car ride was silent. As we passed through the garden on our way home, I subconsciously paused in front of the swing. Oscar turned and asked, "What's wrong?" I shook my head. Nothing. It was so blinding. Chapter 6. When I suggested going to the hospital with Oscar to visit Eva, his first reaction was to look at me warily. I pretended not to notice. Is that not okay? After several seconds, Oscar finally responded. It's fine. Perhaps due to the recent improvements in her treatment, Eva looked much better. After chatting for a while, she suddenly mentioned wanting to be discharged and go back to work. I know it's impossible for me to be fully cured, but in the last few months of my life, I want to live as normally as I can. Is that okay? She looked at Oscar with hopeful eyes. Of course. He wouldn't refuse. Oscar suggested arranging a job for Eva in his company, but Eva immediately shook her head and refused. No, that would be unfair. I want to find a job on my own merit. Unsurprisingly, Oscar turned to me. I'll pay her salary. You don't have to give her any actual work. It won't affect you. I couldn't help but curl my lips in a sarcastic smile and asked, Oscar, what exactly do you take me for? He froze slightly, then sighed. But she's sick. Yes, she's sick. She has cancer. She's dying. So whatever she wants to do, we healthy people have to accommodate her unconditionally. After a long pause, I pulled a business card from my bag and handed it to him. Speaking calmly, I'll give you the contact for human resources. Let her submit a resume and go through the normal interview process. Oscar didn't take the card. Instead, he looked at me with a cold gaze, as if he was seeing me for the first time. Carolina, being so petty with someone who's about to die, you make me feel scared. Even after Oscar walked far away, I still stood there, motionless, maintaining my last shred of dignity, until a young girl approached me from behind, tapped me on the shoulder, and gently reminded me, Caro, your pants are dirty. I snapped out of it and thanked her. In fact, I had felt sore in my lower back since I woke up that morning. My period had started early while I was in the hospital corridor. Oscar was so preoccupied with Eva that he didn't even notice me buying a pack of sanitary pads from the convenience store or going to the bathroom. Years ago, when I had my first period at school, it was a mess. And it was Oscar who went to the school shop to buy me sanitary pads and tied his school jacket around my waist. But that was when Oscar was only 14. Chapter 7. I had my assistant investigate a bit about Eva. It wasn't too different from what I imagined. She had a tragic life, no loving parents, and always lived in poverty. Oscar was the only ray of light that shined upon her. Without Oscar's help, she might not even be able to afford the medical bills for her cancer treatment. So, I had my assistant transfer a sum of money to Eva's account in the name of her family. Not letting her into my company was the last line I held onto in this marriage. Giving her the money was an act of compassion. As a fellow human, I just didn't expect Oscar would find out. That night, when I got home, I turned on the lights and saw him standing by the entryway, only a few steps away, staring at me with a blank expression. I was a bit surprised. "You're home early today?" His response was to throw a bank card at my face, striking me near the corner of my eye. A sharp pain spread from my temple, growing more intense, causing my fingers to curl up in discomfort. Oscar strode over to me, gripping my wrist tightly, his voice filled with anger. "We're married now. What more do you want? Why are you humiliating her by giving her money?" "I didn't, Carolina. You've had a wealthy and perfect family since you were a child. You studied at the best schools abroad, came back, and joined your family's company. I broke up with her and married you. Everything has gone smoothly for you. But she has nothing. Does humiliating her make you feel even more superior in your noble life?" I closed my eyes. Countless memories flashed through my mind like a fragmented movie. "Oscar." I tried to keep my voice calm, but there was still a tremor in it. "You can't talk to me like this. You can't." Oscar let go of my hand, took a step back, and looked at me, as if he wanted to say something. But at that moment, his phone rang. He pulled it out, and Eva's name flashed on the screen. Oscar's expression changed slightly, and without hesitation, he brushed past me and walked out the door. I stared at the painting on the wall, raising my hand to gently press the injury near my eye. The pain intensified. Chapter 8. After that night, Oscar didn't come home for several days. He didn't contact me, but I still knew that it was because Eva's condition had worsened. She was in so much pain that she couldn't bear it. So she cried and called Oscar. Oscar, who had always stood in front of me in any situation, chose to go to her without hesitation. I found a hospital far away to get a full-body checkup, and the doctor, with a serious expression, told me, "Miss Liu, you need to find a way to release your emotions. It will be beneficial for you." I was silent for a long time. "Thank you, but I don't have anyone to vent to. Who could I even talk to?" During those 3 years abroad, at my worst, I passed out from a stomach hemorrhage and was taken to the hospital by a classmate I barely knew. When I was discharged and walking through a quiet street, I was unlucky enough to get caught in a shootout, and a bullet grazed my waist. I had gotten used to being on my own, especially since, at that time, Oscar and I were broken up. When I came back, he already had Eva by his side. I couldn't say anything. Accepting Oscar's proposal was, admittedly, a bit selfish, because on countless nights when I could barely hold on, I thought of the boy who had stood at the airport with red eyes, telling me he'd wait for me, and that thought always gave me a little more courage. As I thought about the past, I slowly walked out of the hospital. Suddenly, someone stood in front of me. I looked up. It was Oscar. He was staring at me with a cold and frightening expression. His voice filled with fear. "Caro, why are you at the hospital?" I froze for a couple of seconds, then suddenly understood. He was afraid I might be like Eva. So, I smiled. "Just a checkup." Oscar didn't believe me, so I pulled the checkup report out of my bag and handed it to him. I kept the one from the psychologist to myself. From the data, there was nothing seriously wrong with my body. Oscar's face remained tense as he carefully flipped through the report twice. He then stared at the line that read, "Old waist injury. No major issues," and asked me, "What injury is this? Why have I never heard you mention it?" I froze for a moment. "Oh, It was from a shootout abroad. I got slightly injured. When we got into the car, Oscar's gaze was so cold it could have frozen over. Feeling helpless, I stared at the scenery passing by the window for a while and finally decided to speak. Don't worry. I know my body well. I get a checkup every year. I'm not like Sue. Why didn't you call me? He suddenly interrupted me, slamming on the brakes and pulling the car to the side of the road. He unfastened his seatbelt and leaned toward me. I knew he was asking about today's checkup, so I looked at him calmly. It was just a routine checkup. Isn't Eva's condition unstable these days? At the mention of Eva, a complicated emotion flashed across his eyes. It looked like jealousy, but also like anger. But in the end, the focus returned to me, though his voice was no longer as confident. When you were injured so badly before, you should have told me, Caro. This time, I really laughed. When I was injured, I paused slightly. It should have been the day you were finally moved by Eva's relentless pursuit and agreed to be with her. Oscar, after the bullet was removed, I saw your post on Weibo from my hospital bed. Chapter 9. In the days that followed, Oscar's attitude toward me suddenly became much more affectionate. Aside from our tiring marital life, he would even wait for me in his car outside my office every day when I left work. For a moment, it felt like we were 18 again. Back then, there was nothing between us except pure and intense love. I kept wondering and speculating in my heart until I finally told him, you don't have to feel guilty. Even if you had known back then, being half a world away, it wouldn't have made a difference. The smile that had been on Oscar's lips instantly disappeared. He took a deep breath. I'm not making it up to you, Carolina. You're my wife. We've only been married for a little over a year. This is how things are supposed to be. Before I could say anything, Oscar's phone, which was sitting on the dashboard, suddenly lit up. It was a message from Eva. Surprisingly, Oscar didn't respond. I asked him, how is Eva doing? Oscar let out a cold laugh. What does it have to do with me? She has plenty of people who want to take care of her. She doesn't need me. I thought. If he looked into the rearview mirror at that moment, he would see that his eyes were filled with burning jealousy. I soon understood why. At the end of the month, I went to visit a relative who was in the hospital, and as it happened, Eva was in the same hospital. As I passed by Eva's room, I saw her sitting on the bed in her hospital gown, her thin, bony fingers repeatedly dialing a number. Beside her stood a young man in a black baseball cap. He cast a dark glance at me through the doorway and then gently said to Eva, stop calling. After all, he's married now, and he needs to go home to his wife. Eva, you still have me. Eva acted as if she hadn't heard him. She continued to dial Oscar's number, tears streaming down her face as she choked out the words. Don't ignore me, Oscar. You promised you'd stay with me until the end. I admit, in that moment, I envied her, because my life had always followed a predetermined path, and I had never had a choice. When I got home, Oscar had already made dinner. I casually mentioned, I saw Eva today. She looks like she's lost more weight. Oscar stared at me, and his expression instantly became serious. Why did you go see her? That look, as sharp as a knife, brought me out of my momentary dreamlike days. I laughed mockingly. Don't worry, I wasn't there to cause her any trouble. I just happened to pass by while visiting someone else. That's not what I meant, Oscar said, avoiding my gaze. Perhaps to make it up to me, he suggested we go out for my birthday next month. We could catch a midnight movie, back-to-back showings, and then go to the beach to watch the sunrise. I should have refused, but the way he looked at me so earnestly and the plan he proposed happened to be what we did together on my 16th birthday. At that time, I had felt like I was suffocating. Even though Oscar didn't know what was going on, he was sharp enough to notice that I wasn't in a good mood. So, in the middle of the night, he knocked on my window and took me out. We watched 2 movies together, a little thing called Love and Roman Holiday. By the time the movies ended, the sky was turning pale, and Oscar rode his bike along the coastal highway, eventually stopping at the edge of a cliff, where the golden sun slowly rose from the sea. He confessed his feelings to me, but that was a long, long time ago, so long that now he had to recreate those memories to piece together the scattered details. So I agreed. I said yes, like that night when we were 16. Chapter 10. Even if we watched the same movies, I couldn't recover the feelings we had back then. It's like whenever I'm with Oscar, I find myself constantly reminiscing about the past. That means the current version of him can no longer balance my love and disappointment. I'm just unwilling to let go, still clinging to those moments when he held on to me and stopped me from falling. Once I realized this, I focused my attention on Oscar beside me. He wasn't watching the movie either. Instead, he looked restless. Occasionally, he would pull out his phone, glance at it, and then put it away like it had stung him. I quietly reminded him, "It's vibrating. Someone's calling you." Oscar forced a smile. "Don't worry about it. Today, I'm here to celebrate your birthday." Pathetic and laughable. I actually believed him. After the movie ended, Oscar finally answered Eva's 28th call. On the other end, I could hear her desperate sobbing. "Oscar, being sick is so hard. I've vomited so much blood. Am I going to die?" "Oscar." As I watched him, Oscar calmly put away his phone, leaned down, and kissed my cheek. "I'm going to the restroom." And then, he never came back. I waited for a long time outside that secluded private theater, which was close to the sea. Eventually, I called Oscar. His phone was off. After hanging up, I saw that Eva had sent me a friend request on WeChat. I accepted it. She quickly sent several messages. "I'm sorry, Carolina. I know today is your birthday. I wanted to prove how important I am to him. You're Oscar's white moonlight. No matter how well I treat him, I can't shake your place in his heart. But now I'm sick and dying. Let me be selfish just once and be a vile woman." White moonlight. White moonlight. That term, it's disgusting. I could feel a violent emotion surging within me. But before I could respond, a hand suddenly grabbed me, pulling me into a nearby alley with tremendous force. I fell to the ground in my dress, my knees and elbows scraping against the rough pavement and walls, sending waves of sharp pain through my body. I looked up and met a pair of gloomy, crazed eyes. They seemed familiar, yet strange. It was the young man in black from Eva's hospital room. "You're Oscar's wife? Who do you think you are? Making Eva upset? She suffers from cancer day and night. And you? Being the happy little princess isn't enough. You have to take away the man she loves, making her last days miserable too." He pulled the brim of his baseball cap lower, looking at me cruelly. "Make it hurt as much as possible, but don't let her pass out." The sky slowly began to lighten. The sunrise was almost here, and behind the young man, a tall, menacing figure emerged, stopping in front of me. Dust scattered. Why does everyone think Eva is the one to pity? I'm the one who's lost everything. Chapter 11. Those fragmented images flashed through my mind once again. This time, I saw them a little more clearly. I was 6 years old when my mother was suddenly diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer. Even after a full mastectomy, the cancer cells still spread. As she lay in bed, her vitality fading day by day, someone came to the house. It was my aunt, my mother's twin sister, who looked about 80% like her. She naturally took over my mother's place, assuming everything that had once belonged to her. My father didn't protest because he knew both families had to stay tied together. I was only 6, too young to understand why I had to call my aunt Mom, or why, after she had been with us for just 1 month, I had a new half-sister. I only remember that on the day my mother passed, she held my hand tightly and said, "Caro, you must live well, live healthily." That sentence became my shackle. Every time I heard Eva say she didn't want to die, a surge of absurdity rose in my heart. Those who want to live well and be loved are the ones stricken by terminal illness, while those who want to die must live on, carrying their guilt. At home, I wasn't allowed to do many things because I was the eldest daughter, responsible for the Liu family. But my younger sister could act spoiled and do whatever she wanted. When my relationship with Oscar became known, my father sent my aunt to talk to me. She wore my mother's qipao and pearl necklace, looking at me with disdain and pity. "You can date, sure, but don't give away your first time. Otherwise, you'll lose your value. Carolina, you're the older sister. You wouldn't want your younger sister to bear your responsibilities, would you?" When I turned 20, she gave me 2 choices: either marry a business partner of my father's, who was 20 years older than me, someone my father couldn't easily sway, or go abroad to study business, return to Mary, and help manage the company. I chose the second option. Not long after I returned, they began evaluating who would be a suitable marriage partner, who we should bind the family to maximize the Liu family's interests. Their approach was rational, clear-headed, and thorough, except they never asked for my opinion. Luckily, Oscar proposed to me then. I accepted him, thinking he could still pull me away from the abyss like he had done for so many years, keeping me from falling. But by then, Eva was already by his side. Chapter 12. When my dress was torn beyond recognition, I finally grabbed the stiletto heel that had been thrown aside. I raised it and brought it down forcefully. Warm blood splattered on my face as the man collapsed, his body going limp, holding the blood-stained stiletto. I leaned against the wall and slowly stood up. A few steps away, the young man heard the commotion and turned his head to look at me. There was a dark shadow in his eyes. "You've got some fight." I took 2 deep breaths and said to him, "It's always been your beloved Eva who's wronged me. No matter how much you like her, her heart only belongs to Oscar. Even if he's married, even if she's dying, she'll never think of you." "Shut up!" He charged at me in a rage, slapping me across the face. If you hadn't accepted Oscar's proposal, they would have made up after their fight, and she would have been happy with him. My cheek burned with pain, but I tilted my head back and smiled calmly at him. Why shouldn't I have accepted it? If Eva had fought with Oscar and then said she wanted to marry you, would you have refused her? She's dying. No matter how much you care, you can't cure her cancer. So you take out your anger on someone innocent like me. I paused for a moment, then softly uttered 2 words. Pathetic. If you love her so much, you should die with her. At that moment, I remembered what the doctor had said to me, with a serious expression. "Miss Liu, you need to find a way to release your emotions. It will do you good." Turns out, he was right. The young man stared at me, dumbfounded. After a while, he let out a heart-wrenching wail, slid down the wall, and curled up on the ground. He cried so miserably. I just stood there watching, feeling somewhat confused. These people always believe they're the most pitiful in the world. Eva, Oscar, and him, they're all the same. I barely managed to tidy up my tattered dress, and as I walked out of the alley, the first rays of sunrise appeared on the distant horizon. Gradually, the light filled the once stark sky. It was a beautiful sight. So, it didn't really matter anymore whether Oscar was by my side to watch it with me. I hailed a cab and went to the police station, handing over the blood-stained stiletto and asking the officer if this counted as self-defense. The young female officer looked at me, her clear eyes full of pity. "Miss Liu, don't worry. The marks on your body prove it was an attempted rape. But, are you okay?" I said I was fine, that it might hurt a little, but I could take care of the wounds myself. "Do you need me to contact your family to come pick you up?" "Who could I contact?" I lowered my eyes and smiled. "No need. Everyone in my family is busy with their own lives." After finishing my statement, I went home, found the divorce papers I had prepared long ago, signed them, and sent them to Oscar's company. Throughout this entire process, Oscar never contacted me once, but I could see from Eva's social media that he had taken her to Yunnan. The reason, of course, was the same as always. She was dying. It was her last wish. She sat on a swing, and Oscar pushed her high into the air, her pristine dress billowing in the wind. She said, "Oscar, when I die, bury my ashes here. I want to be a free spirit. If you ever think of me, come here and enjoy the view." How romantic. Even in death, she wanted to be so profound, to make sure Oscar would remember her for a lifetime. After reading that post, I coldly deleted Eva from my contacts. I had already guessed Oscar's thoughts. His silence was a form of self-deception. He believed that as long as he didn't speak to me, he could quietly accompany Eva to the end of her life, and then return to me, pretending nothing had happened, and we could continue on. But that's impossible. Chapter 13. Before leaving the city, I went to see someone. It was a mutual friend of mine and Oscar's, named Joel. Because of my personality. I hadn't made many friends growing up, he barely counted as one. I'm leaving. He bit his cigarette, standing up in shock. No way. You've got cancer too? I chuckled. Of course not. I'm just not staying here anymore. Going to another city. What about the Liu family business and legacy? I'm giving it up, I said calmly, then repeated. I never wanted it to begin with. Everyone knew about Oscar's tangled relationship with his terminally ill ex-girlfriend. They were all laughing behind my back. So when I told my family about the divorce, my aunt gently said, "It's fine. In families like ours, even a second marriage won't be without value." I smiled. I have no value left. So don't count on it. The Liu family business is yours, and the things you've always coveted, which belonged to my mother, they've long been yours. I said, if you don't want the scandal of forcing the eldest daughter of the Liu family to her death, then let me go. For the first time, hatred appeared in her always soft, gentle eyes, as if out of spite. She lowered her voice and softly said, "It's not your fault, Caro. Your husband would rather be with a dying woman. You really are pitiful." After my love and expectations for Oscar had completely vanished, her words no longer had the power to hurt me. I told Joel, "Anyway, if Oscar asks, don't tell him where I went, Carolina. You have everything, Oscar. I have nothing left but this body." According to Joel, just a few days after I left, Oscar came back. He was alone, without Eva. I guess she didn't make it, but at least she died between the mountains and the sea, fulfilling her last wish. Oscar called me many times, but I didn't answer. Then he texted me, "What's going on? Are you divorcing me, Caro?" I didn't reply. There was no need to respond. Joel told me Oscar was like a caged, restless beast, searching everywhere for me, even going to the Liu family. When he stormed in, my father and aunt were discussing whether they should drag me back and marry me off to a widower in his 50s who was wealthy and powerful. Carolina, you should have seen Oscar's expression. Joel marveled over the phone. Also, didn't you report the incident? The police sent a notice to your house and called, saying they couldn't reach you. But those 2 suspects in the attempted rape case have been caught. Joel kept me updated with other bits of news. Oscar went to the police station and asked for details about that day. Perhaps out of sympathy, the female officer told him everything, and then Oscar broke down. He collapsed on the sidewalk outside the police station, crying his heart out. Joel was with him, watching as Oscar lifted his red, tear-streaked eyes and asked again, "Do you know where Caro went?" "No idea." Joel shrugged, helpless. "You know Carolina, her heart's cold. None of us are close to her. She only ever cared about you." That seemed to completely crush Oscar. He started obsessively investigating everything I had been through over the years. What happened during those 3 years abroad? Every detail he uncovered seemed to break him further. I imagine he deeply regretted the things he said to me. But there's no undoing the past. Hearing about Oscar's suffering didn't bring me any satisfaction, only a vast indifference. After all, whether I was going through those events or remembering them now, I couldn't muster much emotion, because all my life, I've felt like a walking corpse, only ever moved by Oscar, who gave me a glimmer of hope in the stagnant waters of my existence. But now, even that is gone. One day, Joel told me our old high school was holding an anniversary celebration, inviting distinguished alumni to attend. Both Oscar's and my invitations were sent to Oscar's place. He went back to visit the teachers, and the former headmaster remarked with nostalgia, "All these years, you and Carolina have been together and even got married. How rare. Not many young couples make it that far." Oscar stood there, motionless, listening to the headmaster recall the past, details he had long buried in the corners of his memory. He must have remembered how deeply he loved you at 17 or 18. Even after we all got drunk after the college entrance exams. Walking down the street, he kept muttering about how he was going to marry Carolina one day. Joel paused. "So, as we left the school, I told him, stop pretending. Carolina was abroad for 3 years, and you never even thought about visiting her. You were too busy with Eva. Besides, she's already given up on you now." Chapter 14. Oscar is a very smart man. From that one sentence, He figured out that I was still in contact with Joel, so he found a way to get my address from him. That afternoon, as I came back from the hospital with a bag of medication, I saw Oscar standing at the door. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red. Caro, you're sick too, aren't you? No, I'm perfectly healthy. I replied coldly. It's just some medication for psychological and mental health issues. I've been taking them for many years now, but it's not life-threatening, at least. It's not like cancer, which is incurable. With that, I brushed past him and headed toward the courtyard. But Oscar grabbed the hem of my clothes, pleading, Caro, I don't want to divorce you. I found it absurd, because my love for him didn't disappear all at once. It slowly eroded over time. With each moment he chose Eva, bit by bit. Now that Eva was gone, he came back to me. What was the point of that? So I calmly suggested, actually, if you can't let go of Eva, you could have gone with her. I don't miss her. After raising his voice, Oscar's tone softened again. I told you from the start, Eva had cancer. She was dying. I just felt guilty and wanted to accompany her through her final journey. I've lost count of how many times Oscar has mentioned Eva's illness in front of me, as if because she had cancer, the whole world had to accommodate her unconditionally. Death, in the face of it, demanded everything to yield. So finally, I laughed. What's so special about that? It's just cancer, just dying, isn't it? She's not the only one who's ever gone through that. Over the years, I've slit my wrists, inhaled charcoal fumes, and taken pills several times. It's just that each time, I was saved. When she cried in front of you, saying she didn't have long to live, I was actually envious of her. I envied her for being able to die without restraint. If I could, I would have traded places with her. Let me die, and let her live, so she could be with you, happy. Everyone would get what they wanted. Wouldn't that be better? Oscar stared at me in disbelief, his eyes like two deep, bottomless lakes, now filled with wet despair and pain. Caro, I didn't know. If I had known. Oscar couldn't finish his sentence, because he simply couldn't say anything more. It was clear that he was the one who made the mistakes. He was the one who hurt me. Yet here he was, crying so miserably in front of me, as if I had wronged him somehow. Even at this moment, I didn't feel much emotion. Oscar, people change. People can change. So even though you promised at 20 that you'd wait for me, you changed your mind at 21. I never blamed you for that. I truly loved you, so much that for all these years, you were the only one who could stir my emotions. Even when you gave up on me and ran to Eva without hesitation, I could let it go. But that love, you've worn it down, little by little, with your own hands. Whether it's you, or Eva, or that lunatic who's in love with Eva, you all hurt me for the same reason, because I had everything. I lived a happy life, while you were all stuck in impossible situations, unable to love, always lacking something. But now, I've given up everything. I have nothing left. Can you finally let me go? Chapter 15. Oscar finally disappeared from my life. Occasionally, I would hear bits of news about him from Joel. For example, the 2 suspects in the assault case suddenly died in prison, or how the Zhao family suddenly began ruthlessly suppressing the Liu family's company, even taking orders at unreasonable prices just to undercut them. In the end, the Liu family went bankrupt, and the Zhao family was also severely weakened. The pure gold shackles that had bound me for over 20 years finally collapsed and disintegrated. When I heard the news, I was momentarily stunned before going to a nearby convenience store to buy some alcohol. Since I'd had my stomach pumped several times, my stomach had always been fragile, unable to handle alcohol well. Whenever I went to a bar, I'd just order a drink and leave it there, not actually drinking it. But moments like these, rare as they are, deserved some celebration. I took a couple of sips, felt a slight pain in my stomach, and put the can down. That's when my phone rang. I answered it. It was Oscar. His voice carried a hint of drunkenness. Caro, I avenged you. For a moment, it was as if his voice had pulled me back to when I was 14. I'd been bullied, and he had gone to fight for me. In the end, he came back to me, his face full of bruises, saying, "I won, Caro. I stood up for you." That was the beginning of my feelings for him. But I quickly snapped back to reality. Hanging up, Oscar, in a panic, pleaded, "Don't. Caro, I just want to hear you say a few more words." I smiled faintly. "Have you visited Eva recently?" Oscar didn't respond, but his breathing on the other end of the line suddenly became rapid, filled with a bone-deep fear. "I forgot to tell you, the night you left me to go to Eva, she added me on WeChat. So, every stop on your trip, every little thing you did, I knew it all. Oscar, I know you've done a lot for me, but I won't feel any gratitude toward you. You don't deserve it." The night breeze, mixed with the soft moonlight, gently blew across. After a long, long silence, Oscar's voice finally came through again, hoarse and choked with sobs. "Yes, I don't deserve it, Caro. Everything is my fault. I'm the one who deserves to suffer. I beg you, please live well." I said nothing and just hung up. A couple of days ago, I went to the hospital for a follow-up. The doctor said my emotional state had improved significantly. Maybe escaping the heavy burdens of the past gave me a bit more courage to keep going. It had also been a long time since I dreamed of the teenage me and Oscar. I tossed the beer can into the trash and left the balcony. Tonight, I'll go to bed early. Tomorrow, I'll go to the beach to watch the sunrise.